Hello and welcome to another edition of Capital Calculus. I am your host, Anil Padmanabhan. Recently, the International Monetary Fund, or the IMF, released the new national income numbers for all countries. It emerges that India's gross domestic product, or GDP, doubled in the 10 years ended 2024. Undoubtedly, this is a remarkable milestone, all the more since it was achieved in most inclement circumstances, unlike, say, China's growth trajectory, which had global headwinds behind it. However, this aggregate masks more than it reveals. It does not tell us that India is a country of multiple speeds, countries within a country, as it were. For instance, 80% of discretionary consumption is accounted for by 20% of the population. On the other hand, electoral power is influenced by the balance 80%. This is a delicate trade-off that every government has to tackle. To understand how this difficult political economy influences India's development trajectory, we have in our studios today Sajjan Kumar. He is an author, scholar, and a political researcher. Welcome, Sajjan.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure talking to you.
Great. Sajjan, I wanted to draw your attention to a speech given by Prime Minister Narendramodi in the first half of this ongoing budget session, towards the end. He talked about how 25 crore people who have been lifted out of abject poverty are now part of this neo-middle class. Okay. Effectively, we have added another 25 crore to the aspirational class of India. So how does this new layer complicate India's aspirational quotient, as it were?
Prime Minister's politics, though it's layered, but if you try to search for one binding theme, one thread, it is always about the politics of aspiration, And that is why you will find that many ones who fall on the left of the centrum or, left of the center or left spectrum will be a bit critical because he signify something that is a part of the aspirational politics. This is one. Two, when he claimed that 25 crore Indians now are part of the neo-middle class, certainly he is catering that we have another significant section of the society, primarily coming not from the metropolitan areas, but from the tier 2, tier 3 cities, even from the hinterlands, countrysides, who have a sense of deep aspiration to catch up. And also they have the belief that this is the time wherein their aspiration will have the positive consequence. And that is why when he is catering to that neo-middle class, it is something which is yet to be the bona fide middle class, but has all the potential, right and positive environment, the correct motivation, and most importantly, the faith in the leadership, and therefore the legitimacy in the system, to catch up. And that is why this is the time in the last 10 years when prime ministers attempt to trigger the aspirational latent energy, which always was in the societal realm, but has been neglected or was not given due attention. This is something that is coming to the fore. So it is a correct fusion of the leadership, policies, and societal aspiration coming together. And certainly this is going to be what we call as the demographic dividend. And at a time, as you pointed out, despite the global tailwinds that India is facing. So in a comparative realm, when we do see that economically this is not considered to be the best of the times, in India we have certain plus factor. One, the top 20% Indians are increasing their consumption, which is certainly driving the headwinds. Two, the remaining 80%, from them, among them, a significant section are still into the aspirational directions rather than in the direction of the anxieties. And that is why I think that overall Prime Minister is signifying a collective energy that is always there in the society, what it needs to be channelized, and I think he is trying to trigger it further.
So, Sajjan, from what you just told us, it's very clear that there are multiple speeds at which India is growing.
Yeah.
So, you have the upper crust, which is, like you said,
Yeah.
increasingly premiumizing the economy, you
Yeah.
know, demanding premium products. And the rest who are doing basic consumption plus whatever little aspirations they
Yeah.
can realize.
Yeah.
How does this complicate India's development process?
Let me give you a simile. I mean, understanding India, not just the policies, even the politics, even the societal concerns, anxieties and aspiration, it's like peeling the onion, you know. You have one layer and that's the truth. And then you keep on peeling it and you find layers beneath the layers. And that is India. And that is why understanding India and analyzing it always should be a matter of a holistic frame in the final analysis, not a singular take. So as you said that we do see economically, we have the 20% of Indians, you know, who are accounting for 80% of the consumptions, and therefore, be it FMCG, be it durables, you know, they are the ones who are bringing the or contributing to the development push. Then you have the remaining. Now that remaining 80%, we have multiple layers. What are the layers? One, if you go to the tier 2 and tier 3 cities, you do find that there are politics and policies catering to the aspiration, which I call as the aspirational class, you know, who are trying to catch up, be it about the self-startups, be it about taking advantage of multiplicity of economic avenues. And there are people who are being subsumed by deep anxieties that may be primarily into the countrysides, the ones who do not have enough land or capital, and who are just living on the subsistence level. But even there, compared to what it used to be a decade before, we are not hearing the instances of hunger deaths. We are not hearing the instances of collective distress. We remember 20 years back, we have been reading about the books on best-selling books on droughts, hunger deaths, etc. You know, and that used to define the landscape or the agrarian and the rural landscape of India. That phase effectively is over. Be it Odisha, be it the states who are lagging behind. This is what. But nevertheless, we can divide this 80% of population socially into caste communities, especially into the tier 2, tier 3 cities and the rural landscape, also in terms of the states. And you can divide India, suppose we start with the regions, states, into low aspirational states, wherein the people's aspirational index is low. And then you have states which are high aspirational index. It's not about government's contribution or the state's economic status. It is the aspiration of the people within that state. Let me give you an example. If you go to states like Bihar, Odisha, Bengal, and central state Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, even Jharkhand, etc., you will find, and I am talking just about the north, I mean north in the sense which is not south. It can have from north to east. The aspirational index of the people is low. What they expect from the politicians, from the government, from the policy makers, you will find that the very quest or the desperation that you see in many other states would be significantly low. And that is why the satisfaction will always be more even if little bit is delivered. So compared in Bihar, compared to Lalu Prasad Yadav's 15 years reign, Nitish Kumar reign is considered good. Why? You know, because a failure student, if he or she is a reference, then someone who is passing with the 3rd division will always be considered meritorious. That's Nitish Kumar compared to Lalu Prasad Yadav, you know. Similarly, you see Jharkhand with so much, you know, as I mean, expectation and everything. The state was carved out. It is a mineral rich state, but today you see what is happening. You know. Similarly, the same story goes for many of the states. But even in north, you go to Himachal Pradesh. And it's a small state. But the kind of expectation the electorates and the people in Himachal Pradesh would be having from the MLAs and MP, it would be like they are expecting their MLAs and even the minister to work as municipal councillors. A drain, if it's not made and into the difficult hilly terrain in front of their house, would be enough not to vote to that politician. Having a better school from primary, middle to high, basic health facilities, their upgradation, these are the issues that become the determinant in a state like Himachal Pradesh, not in Uttarakhand. And that is why you say in Himachal Pradesh every 5 years, you see the circulation of power, from one party to other party. Rajasthan also, I have seen in the last 10-15 years that aspirational index is rising, and that is why you find when people account a government for their works, you see that the politicians do not have a long durée the way you see in Bengal, Bihar, etc. This is what. Already we know, and this is stating the obvious, the western and the southern states have the high aspirational index.
So Sajjan, I just want to go back to this anxiety politics you talked about. How does that stack up against the aspirational politics, and also the fact that, to the credit of this government, they have pursued provision of basics like water, electricity, cooking gas, banking and so on mission mode.
Yeah.
And more or less saturation levels have been achieved on most of these basics. So how does all of this stack up with the anxiety politics that you talked about?
See, there are two models of politics. One is the politics of aspiration, other is the politics of anxieties. It's up to you how do you, which one you choose as your central plank. Both works electorally, So different political parties and leaders cater to one over the other. Coming to the basic needs, everyday needs of people, common people or Aam Aadmi. Now, if you think of one household, Pakka household, I remember 2017 and 18, I was in Tripura, trying to understand the state because it was a time wherein BJP was trying to make an entry, which it succeeded. 2017, when we were going through all the constituencies, which is 60 assembly constituencies, except Agartala and some of the other cities, Dharmanagar, etc., entire Tripura was about what you call the Kacha house, which needs to be every time. And that showed that when it's the Kacha house, the basic durables, FMCGs, etc., will also have a direct link. I visited the state again in 2023, and was there for almost 1.5 months. And we again, with a huge team, went through all the constituencies. And you won't believe that entire rural landscape in Tripura has undergone a paradigm shift. Paradigm shift, now you see all the houses, barring few exceptions here and there, primarily are Pakka houses. Now that is not enough. With those Pakka houses, you also see some of the durables also happening. So you will see fans, you will see AC coolers, you will also see two-wheelers.
And dish antennas.
Dish antennas. Now, many of these things may not be reflected into the retailers, data, because they are being purchased not first hand. They are second hand, third hand, etc. Even the bikes are coming, so they may not be captured. But that's there. You go to the Koraput in Odisha, which is on the Malkangiri, Koraput, the tribal belt, on the border of Andhra, one of the backward regions in southern Odisha. You see the kind of changes that are happening because Prime Minister Awas Yojana, housing scheme, and this is a wisdom and insight given to by many of the ones who are the beneficiary. They said, when we shift from Kacha house to Pakka house, we feel proud that we can invite our relatives, our friends, our guests. Now when they come, we do not use the crude local based bakery products, etc. We want to purchase Britannia or Tiger biscuit, etc. I'm just giving you the shifts. Then you also have some sort of two-wheeler bikes. Some also have second hand, third hand, four-wheelers which you discard after 10 years, 15 years from the metropolitan areas. You have dish antennas. You have people who are shifting into. So how you see the consumption patterns, the initial question, though on data reveals that it's just the 20%, but even the 80%, a significant section is also into the consumption patterns, but that may not be kind of taken into account because they are not being purchased through a formal network. This is one. Two, now since one scheme of Pakka house, and if there is a one woman in a household, she needs cooking gas, it is being provided, electricity, it is being provided, you need toilet, it is being provided with spectacular success. And that is for any field researchers like me, in the last 15 years, we could see when you travel in the evening, you know, that women coming out, you know, that phenomenon has drastically reduced. And then you have other welfare schemes, which is the money is coming directly into the accounts of the households, primarily the women, elderly, etc. Now we do see that this is also affecting their consumption pattern, and once the consumption patterns gets affected, that is the aspirational index that people are aspiring. Even many people said that we feel proud, and even if we have to borrow from here and there, we do it so that our status is meant. So psychological, you know, boosting of the sense of your own self, that is something happening. So this is one aspect that you see Prime Minister Modi and the current regime is capturing. Now you see other factors. Other factor is that when there is a purpose behind this aspirational politics by providing the basic infrastructure, which should have been there by 60s, 70s, but which is now happening on a mission mode with a spectacular success. Now the other votaries model is the politics of anxiety. You know, what is the politics of anxiety? That whatever you are getting, and this is the votaries of the protest politics, and that has been there, that always trigger the anxiety, trigger points of the people. You know, people are thinking of doing something great, catching up, trying to emulate a model, and they will say this developmental model is primarily catering to the 1% Indians. India is about 90% versus 10%. You know? So whatever you are getting, it's just a peanut. Entire country, everything is yours. So they are basically befooling you. You are under some sort of a false consciousness, and therefore keep on. So you take away the aspirational purpose behind all the infrastructural investment into the household and around, and add an anxiety index, you know, and start mobilizing people that this is not enough, you want more freebies, and it becomes a spiral. Then you create any developmental initiative comes, you know, you start mobilizing people around those issues, and therein you find that India has entered into a narrative war, you know. So while BJP wins elections, it loses narrative. Why? Because you win election because of people's faith that you are giving them some basic infrastructure which was missing completely under the previous regimes and before that. So therefore, people want to vote, and poor vote especially because they do not want to let go of the benefit. But the psychological purpose that was behind that of the aspiration, suddenly election gets over, then comes the protest politics, who now are also capturing the opposition party's platform. Rather than being allied, they are capturing it from inside, and thereby the opposition parties and protest politics start leading them, you know, into protest after protest. So in the last 10 years, you will find that with BJP's spectacular rise as a dominant party, as a hegemonic party, you also see a spectacular rise into the protest politics. In Gujarat, you have Una, you have Bhima Koregaon. In Maharashtra, you have Saharanpur riots. In Uttar Pradesh, you have farmers' protest. You have land acquisition, and protests were always there. It's the kind of intensity wherein policy paralysis is not something. Previous regime, when we and you know better, used to use the word policy paralysis, the blame was on the government and the ministers and the regime. Today, the government is forced to go for a policy paralysis because of the protest politics. And I think that protest politics, politics of anxiety, has a system that they wait for a successful welfare scheme to take root, it is like the left party. They wait for new cities to build up, 50s, 60s. They wait for new factories to come, industries to come, and then they won't be there when it is being built up. They were nowhere there in developmental story. Once it's there, you have Jamshedpur, you have Tata, you have Bokaro, you have Bhilai, you have Durgapur, etc. Then they will go and form a protest union, labor union, and will halt the entire production and entire factory system. So these protest politics are into that. They will wait for some basic infrastructure, some policy delivery to be there. Then they will reach there and say, this is just a peanut. You are being plundered. Your forefathers have been plundered. And these are very emotive issues. You can mobilize. So what you are completely derailing the aspirational politics, because if welfare schemes, customized or universal, do not lead to the aspirational index wherein people want to invest further, to augment their income further, then it becomes freebies which has no end. Then your demographic dividend, that is your asset, becomes a burden. It becomes a demographic burden. And that is why this layering of anxiety and aspiration needs to take into account the parliamentary politics dominated by BJP and protest politics dominated by some of the opposition parties and the votaries of protest politics. Now, if they succeed, and the way we see a synchronized attack on the corporate India, you choose one corporate, then you choose other, you try to create confusion. That way, if the aspirational message is not internalized by the large demographic pool who need it, the subaltern masses, if there is a conflicting message because of the protest politics always over-investing among the same set of people, then this demographic dividend that India is having, and India is the cusp of taking off from its own starting point. And that way, my anxiety is that the votaries of anxiety politics, many times seems to be like the parasites, who wait for government delivery, because your anxiety increases when aspiration also increases, Then if you do not succeed, there is someone to point out, look, you are not succeeding because of a villain. And who is the villain? The one who has triggered the anxiety. Aspiration. So that circularity is something which is happening. So India is at the crossroads of aspirational and anxiety politics. Parliamentary politics led by Prime Minister Modi is catering to that grand fusion which would trigger the latent aspirational index of India across the regions. But then you also have a very potent, institutionally embedded, organized votaries of protest politics, who are catering to the deep-seated emotive anxiety trigger points of the people, by mobilizing them against the same set of policy and policy makers who are trying to bring positive developments. And if they succeed, then entire synchronization or the vision of Viksit Bharat 2047 may be derailed.
Rather a poignant note, but given the complexity of the conversation we just had, a great note to sign off. It's actually very difficult to sum up such a nuanced conversation, but I will try. From what Sajjan has just shared with us, he's talking about the trade-off or the face-off between aspirational and anxiety politics. And the problem with the latter is it is unleashing an era of protest politics, which is actually true. It's bearing out empirically too. So looking ahead, India's development aspirations to become a Viksit or developed economy by 2047 rests to a large extent on how this face-off plays out. And in this, the onus clearly rests on the political leadership of this country, how they guide the country and the people through these maze of contradictions and face-offs. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to StratNewsGlobal.Tech on YouTube. Hit the bell icon so that you don't miss any updates. And please, to share your thoughts, ideas and suggestions with us, I'm available on Twitter, or what we call X, at Capital Calculus. I'll be back next week with another episode. Till then, stay safe.